It's 5 o'clock. Welcome to our May Committee of Adjustment meeting. And for everyone's information, we generally deal with each application according to the order of the agenda. Extra copies are available on the table back there. Anyone present who wishes to speak in support or against an application, as well as anyone with questions or concerns, will have the opportunity to speak. The committee will make their decision following each application. If there's anyone present who's not an applicant or an agent but is interested in the decision of the committee, you may file your interest with our Secretary Treasurer. Please list the file number, your full name and mailing address. Copies of the decisions are automatically sent to the applicant and the agent within 15 days of the meeting. Only the applicant, the minister, a specified person, or any public body may appeal in respect to applications for consent or minor variances to the Ontario Land Tribunal. The decisions are final if there are no appeals 20 days after the committee's decision. May I please remind everyone that we are being recorded and to mute your devices, as well as if you wish to speak to an application, please make your way to the podium. Ensure the mic is on and state your first and last name for the record. First order of business is to determine if there are any members with any disclosures of interest. Seeing none. Have all the members received the minutes of the previous meeting, and are there any errors or omissions? If not, I have a resolution before me. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Linda moves. Phil? All in favor? And that is carried. Okay, our first application to be considered is a minor variance. Oh, yes, I guess we should do a roll call. And we have all our members present and accounted for the first time in some time. Yeah. Welcome back. So the planner can give the report on the first application, please. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since I was not in attendance when this report was first presented, I will excuse myself from all the discussions on this matter.
Okay. And Councillor Very the same, okay. So that's file number AMPL 2023330 in the name of Jennifer Caterino, and the planner can give the report, please.
Thank you. Through the chair, an application has been received to facilitate a detached additional residential dwelling unit, or an ARDU, requiring relief of 102 square meters from the maximum permitted usable floor area of 75 square meters to permit a total usable floor area of 177 square meters and 1.2 meters from the maximum permitted height of 5 meters for a detached ARDU to permit a total height of 6.2 meters. This was referred from January 17th and the March 20th meetings. Whilst the height could be considered minor given the site context, the usable floor area would remain more than twice the size of the permitted maximum usable floor area. Whilst the provincial nomenclature has changed and these are now referred to as additional dwelling units, the policies still require that they be accessory or supplemental to the host dwelling. What's presented is akin to a second single detached dwelling on the lot, which is not permitted under any current legislation. In this instance, it's the professional opinion of staff that the requested relief to form a new dwelling more than twice the usable floor area allowed under the zoning provisions would not meet the intent and purpose of the zoning bylaws or the official plans. By way of update, it's noted that since the previous deferral at the March 20th, 2024 Committee of Adjustment meeting, the usable floor area for the host dwelling has been confirmed as being 2,224 square feet or 237 square meters. So to conclude, the proposed relief of usable floor area cannot be considered minor or appropriate nor meet the intent of the official plan, and as such would not meet the 4 tests for a minor variance in accordance with Section 45(1) of the Planning Act, and is therefore recommended for refusal. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of the committee to the planner? Jennifer, I see you're here. Welcome. No.
Here,
The battery.
take mine. Or take Chris's.
Good evening, Jennifer Caterino, registered professional planner and planner on this file. I've prepared just a quick presentation because there was some confusion at the last Committee of Adjustment meeting. So I can go through the policy analysis and the points that I disagree with staff, but I think it might be important just to illustrate, I don't know if everybody can see that, just the site and which houses we're talking about and what the actual application is about. And then I'll get into the other things later. So in this regard, we're actually kind of lucky. The white building that you can see behind the trees here is actually what's intended to be the secondary dwelling. And the brown house is the principal dwelling. So in this particular instance, we have a farm with a modest principal dwelling, and the planner indicated what the actual square footage is of that house, including the basement, because the previous meeting, it was determined that MPAC had the wrong information, and the size of the house was incorrect in the planning report and included in the analysis by planning staff. So we have a modest 2,500 square foot house. It looks like a ranch. It has a full basement. The accessory dwelling unit is a bit of a different form because the applicants are intending on reusing an old cottage. Oh, sorry, it's okay, you can actually go to the next slide. Yeah, so the applicants are intending on reusing a cottage that they were able to get from Long Point and adapt that so that it can become a secondary dwelling unit on the farm. So the numbers are really small on this slide, and I apologize, but you will see that I don't even have them written down. The main house, like I said, is about 2,500 square feet, and the proposed accessory dwelling unit is approximately 1,700 square feet. So that's another point I wanted to clarify. So through conversations with planning staff, we had reassessed the numbers that were provided in the variance when we were told to up our numbers to 177 square meters, and that included a double count of a staircase. When you remove the staircase, the size of the ADU actually falls a little bit. So the size of the ADU with the basement as proposed is only intended to be 166 square meters. So it is a little bit smaller than what is included in the application. So I just wanted to be clear that the building that is the principal dwelling is the modest brown building there, and the proposed ADU is the white building on the site. So if we can go to the next slide. Again, it might be hard to see the next one. Sherry, thank you. Sorry. Oh, is there a way to make it a presenter mode, Sherry, so it goes full screen? Yeah, so that's okay. I just wanted to give an overview of the site and just to kind of give some context, and I apologize, it is a little bit harder to see on the TV screens, but the principal dwelling is outlined in blue there, and the proposed ADU is outlined in purple. So even the floor, the footprints of the building of the ADU is smaller than the principal dwelling. So some of the concerns that you heard from planning staff that the ADU will become a principal dwelling or is intended to be a second single detached dwelling is a bit uncalled for. An ADU does not have a maximum number of bedrooms. It does not have anything in its definition aside from including the entirety of the floor area in its space. So unlike a single detached dwelling, an ADU is required to have the utility space included in its gross floor area, its basement, its main floor, all the space is included in that, which is different than a principal dwelling, which can exclude a garage, utility space, and things of that nature. So in summary, I won't talk a long time. As mentioned by the planner, the official plan does permit accessory dwelling units on agricultural parcels. One of the criteria is that it be supplemental. There is no definition in the official plan that outlines what supplemental is. Therefore, we use a dictionary definition. Therefore, it just needs to be secondary. The built form of this ADU looks a little bit different than the principal dwelling. Again, there is no urban design requirement that the ADU be a park model trailer, be a single story, not be an adaptive reuse of an existing building. Therefore, in my mind, this complies with the official plan. The official plan has very specific policies that says when things should not be permitted. This application does not go against any of those specific requirements, according to the official plan. When we go to the zoning bylaw, planning staff have already mentioned the height requirement and how that is considered minor in nature and how that can be supported. Talks about the height. It comes down to the gross floor area. So with or without a basement, this house will be exactly in this location, this exact footprint, and in this location. And whether or not there is a basement included in this accessory residential dwelling unit will not have an impact to a single neighbor, to Norfolk County as a whole, and it meets the intent because a secondary dwelling unit providing a home for people of Norfolk County will be permitted, which is permitted, on the property, and it meets the intent. The intent was to provide homes for people on other properties, secondary dwellings. That is the intent. That is the intent of this application. The 4 tests of a minor variance included in the Planning Act are: does the application meet the intent of the official plan? In my professional opinion, this one does. Does it meet the intent of the zoning bylaw? In my opinion, this one does. Is it appropriate for the proposed development? In my opinion, it is, because essentially the footprint of this building will not change. The building is there. It is still supplemental. In my opinion, it's appropriate. And is it minor? In my opinion, it is minor because the impact of this application is minimal. No neighbor, resident of Norfolk County, current occupant of the site will be impacted by the additional floor area requested by the incorporation of a basement to make this a secure home. So, in my opinion, it is minor. Therefore, all the 4 tests of minor variance as outlined in the Planning Act are achieved. Therefore, I think this is a supportable application. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Questions of the committee to the applicant? I have one to planning staff. With the, I guess, somewhat revised calculations on the square footage, how does the 1,760 approximate square feet measure into the application now?
Sorry, what do you mean by that? In comparison to the host dwelling, or in?
So the square footage of the secondary unit, 1,760 approximate square feet. That's the dwelling that I'm focusing on, not the Brown primary residence. How does that number, 1,760 approximately, measure into the application now?
Well, it's 166 square meters. The maximum under the bylaw is 75, so it's still over twice the maximum according to the bylaws, if that's what you're after. Sorry.
That's
Okay,
what I meant.
thank you.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Anything else to add? Tim, go ahead.
Through the chair to planning, do you know what the largest has ever been accepted by this committee over, current bylaw? Do you know what the largest square, maximum over allowance this committee's given?
Through the chair, off the top of my head, no. I know personally one of them has been 120 square meters on Radical Road. Beyond that, I honestly do not recall. Mohammed may have more
True,
overview.
Mr. Chair, I don't remember anything that we approved more than twice. It can be 20, 40, 50, there'd be a little bit more than, but when it is twice, then it is not a minor anymore. When you are talking about 1700, you have to understand that 1700 square feet is a full-fledged house. It can be a single detached full-fledged house by appearance and by its size. And we are talking about an additional dwelling unit, which supposed to be ancillary of the primary dwelling, which should be 70 square meter or close to 70 square meter. If it is a 20 square meter, 50 square meter more than that, we may want to consider that. But when the size is a full-fledged house, then it would be definitely not minor.
Okay, thank you. Tim?
Through the chair to Mohammed. Is there anywhere in the official plan that dictates that, or is that strictly based on our bylaw? I'm misinterpreting because this, the person, sorry, I don't know how to address Jennifer, mentioned that nowhere in the official plan dictates the physical size of the square footage. So I'm just asking, are we missing something?
Through Mr. Chair, the official plan is a high-level policy. It does not provide the details. So when we want to answer the details, you have to go back to the zoning bylaw where you provide the standards. There is a reason why it is 70 meter, not 150 square meter. And the reason is basically this is an ancillary dwelling, an additional dwelling unit that will support the primary dwelling unit, but not necessarily it will be a full-fledged house, a single detached house that you see in the urban areas. 700 is quite common as a single detached house in many areas, in urban areas and in rural areas. 1700 square meter means you can have 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and common rooms, living rooms. It's a full-fledged house that we are talking about.
Jennifer, go ahead.
Through the chair, one question. The number of bedrooms is not listed in any document defining accessory in the zoning bylaw. So it's completely a judgment call on the planning department, the number of bedrooms and what's considered accessory. So when using the official plan and the zoning bylaw, and based on the amendments that just happened when I was working at Norfolk County, when this happened, the intent of the 75 square meters for an accessory dwelling unit was to help the zoning department be able to actually assess accessory dwelling units so that it was easy for them to process applications, because previously, if you recall, there was a ratio. So if you had a massive house, you can have a massive accessory dwelling unit. There was nothing about the number of bedrooms, there was nothing about it. It had to be accessory, it had to be 40% the size of the house. Because of an administrative issue and because we reviewed it and it was difficult for people to assess and determine what the size should be of an accessory dwelling unit, we reverted back to the original size so that we could be fair for urban areas and agricultural areas. And we went back to the original 75 square meters. It was supposed to always be analyzed and assessed if 75 square meters was appropriate for an accessory dwelling unit in Norfolk County. That's actually what happened when things changed and how the number 75 came about. So I just wanted to provide that context because it's relevant in this instance. And again, there is nothing in the zoning bylaw that indicates 2 bedrooms is the max for an accessory dwelling unit. So the fact if the planning department is assessing a 3-bedroom accessory dwelling unit as a full-fledged house, there is also nothing in the zoning bylaw that says a principal dwelling has to have 3 bedrooms. A principal dwelling on a property can have 1 bedroom. It could have 2 bedrooms. So again, that distinction is arbitrary.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have any questions? Phil?
Through the chair, so if this house did not have a basement, it would be about 86, 90 square meters, somewhere in that area? Am I getting that right?
Through the chair, it would be half the size. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, which would clearly be an acceptable level. So the issue is the basement, is it not? Okay.
Tim, go ahead.
So I guess my question would be, would you guys be willing to do it without the basement?
Through the chair, I think the applicants are willing to proceed without the basement, but at the end of the day, the minor variance is about impact. So whether or not there's a basement there or not, the house is still going to be there. So if you see the basement and it's usable space, or you don't see the basement, there really is no impact there. So to answer your question, I think they will proceed without a basement if that's what the committee decides. But I do feel like this application is minor in nature, and that consideration should actually be thought about for the extra space, given what they're proposing.
Linda?
I don't really have any questions, but I do have comments. Would you like those now?
Sure.
Okay. So if this was new construction, I might be viewing this application a little differently. However, because it's an adaptive reuse of an existing structure, I feel that it is minor. You know, it's, they're moving a building onto the property. Jennifer has indicated that it meets the intent of the official plan. It's strictly the zoning bylaw that I think is the issue here. And the impact I feel of the application is minor. It's not affecting neighboring properties. There's no public input, no one opposing the application. The whole thing about it, because it has a basement and it increases the size of it, well, generally homes in this area have basements, and whether they use it as living space or storage or don't use it at all, I just feel that the whole application is very minor, and I personally will support this application.
Okay, thank you. I'll go to the rest of Mohammed. Go ahead.
Through Mr. Chair,
Just pull the mic towards you a bit more.
it is minor. I mean, if the basement is not there, it is minor. We are looking at the size, and yes, to respond to Jennifer's comment about the 70 square meter, there is a reason of 70 meter is not 150 square meters. It's not just because to make it easy to calculate. Definitely there is a reason, and it is because of the size. We don't want to make the size as equal as the primary dwelling unit. I also want to note that there are changes happening in the province, and the province is carefully keeping this provision for additional dwelling unit in the agriculture area and in the agriculture area under the municipal discretion. They're not providing any requirements at this time. There is a reason for that, because these are the agricultural areas, and we don't want to see loss of developments that is impacting the agricultural lands. I think staff would still say that we should keep that as close as to what zoning bylaw requires, and we don't want to see any precedent that we have in future more applications like that.
Okay, thank you. I'll go ahead, Linda.
With respect to the comments regarding loss of agricultural land, this is a permitted use, the accessory dwelling. And without the basement, the size would be appropriate. So it's the impact of losing agricultural land to me is not a valid argument, because whether there's a basement or there's no basement, the impact is the same. And also, with regard to housing, we know that housing is a priority all across Ontario, and I still feel firmly that this is a great adaptive reuse of an existing structure that otherwise might be demolished and not be able to be used as a home. And I will reiterate again that if it was new construction, I may view the application slightly different. However, because you have control over the size when you're building new, but this is the size of the building that they're putting on the lot, And to suggest that they do it without a basement, to me, is overstretching or overreaching, I guess, and those are my...
Jennifer, last call.
Sorry, through the chair, I just can't let this one go. This is the second time I've been in front of this committee where planning staff has misrepresented some of the legislation and some of the policies intended for these types of uses. Mohammed's comments about the provincial legislation have nothing to do with accessory dwelling units. Mohammed's comments about the provincial legislation on agricultural land was when the province was proposing to permit 4 severances for 4 brand new single detached dwellings in the agricultural area. That is not what this is. This is an accessory residential dwelling unit. These are permitted and these are not being considered to be removed from agricultural area by the province. So I disrespectfully, professionally feel like the comments made by Mohammed are not a true reflection of what the province is considering for agricultural land. And I say that professionally, and I meant with the most respect, Mohammed, but I don't think that was a true reflection with what's happening in the province right now.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, through Mr. Chair, I have to respond that. With all due respect, what I mentioned is additional dwelling unit policy through the province kept under the discretion of municipality. I did not talk about the severance of agriculture land. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything further from the committee?
No, I'm not done yet.
Pardon me? Oh, I know. That's why I bring you in here to remind me.
Just going back to the agricultural issue, like I said, it's a permitted use. The size of it without a basement would have the same impact on the agricultural land as with a basement. So I feel that that argument about the loss of agricultural land is not relevant, in my opinion.
I think we've all made our points there. Is there anyone present that wishes to speak to this application? Is there anyone on the line that wishes to speak to this application? So hearing none, we have a recommendation for refusal. What are the wishes of the committee? Either make that motion or propose an alternative.
I will
Linda?
move to approve the application.
Linda moves to approve. Can I get a seconder? Phil seconds that motion. So moved by Linda, seconded by Phil. ANPL 2023330, the name of Jennifer Caterino. The motion reads as to be approved. The proposed relief is of usable floor area to allow an ARDU of more than twice the size. The maximum usable floor area in the zoning bylaw can be considered.
Sorry, Chairman, you've not actually taken a vote yet, so you shouldn't be changing the decision.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. You're right. Thanks. Nice catch. All in favor? Tim?
I'm not going to lie. Everybody's made a good argument on this, so I'm kind of feel, but I will approve.
So you are a yes?
Yes.
Lisa?
Regretfully, I'm a no.
No? Okay. Councilor Very, Phil? Phil? Yes. Linda?
Yes.
And myself is approved. That motion is carried. So the proposed relief is usable floor area to allow an ARDU of more than twice the size of the maximum usable floor area. The zoning bylaw can be considered minor or appropriate and meet the intent of the zoning bylaw, the intent of the official plan as such would meet the four tests, the minor variance in accordance with Section 45(1) of the Planning Act, and that no public input was received, therefore has not been considered as part of this application. And again, that motion was carried. Now, do we want to... Councillor Van Passen, go ahead.
The comment from the planner there, doesn't it make more sense that you do read the decision so everybody knows what they're actually voting on? So I think that is the proper process, to read it all with the changes first,
And that's my usual process.
so that everybody knows what they're voting on.
Yes.
And you can't sort of change it after the fact, right? So I think that would be the proper process.
And that's my usual stick. I'm glad I got everyone here to help me out. Okay. Next up, file number AMPL 2023315, in the name of John Krishnell. And the planner can give the report, please.
Thank you. Through the chair, I'll be presenting on behalf of my colleague Kendall. An application has been received to construct a two-story accessory building requiring relief of 233.67 square meters from the maximum permitted usable floor area of 200 square meters to permit a total usable floor area of 433.67 square meters and 2.08 meters from the maximum permitted height of 8 meters to permit a total height of 10.08 meters. This application was previously deferred to ensure that the requested relief sought were appropriately advertised to the public. The errors were noted by comments from the zoning administrator, and since that time have been reviewed and addressed, and a new public notice sent out and sign installed on the property. The subject lands are located east of the intersection of Charlotteville West Quarterline Road and Charlotteville Road 5, on the south side of Charlotteville Road 5. The area of the subject lands is approximately 14 hectares, with approximately 206 meters of frontage onto Charlotteville Road 5. The subject lands are occupied by a single detached dwelling, a garden shed, a pool shed, and a pergola. The lands are zoned and designated agricultural and provincially significant wetlands. The proposed structure is intended to be located solely on the portion of the land zoned and designated as agricultural, but are within 120 meters of the PSW zone and designated lands. An EIS was waived by the Director of Planning following consultation with the Forestry Department. The LPRCA have also raised no concerns with the application in regards to conformity to Section 3.1 of the PPS. Although the usable floor area relief is significantly higher than the permitted maximum of 200 square meters, the total lot coverage of all accessory buildings would only be approximately 0.3%, well below the maximum permitted lot coverage of 10%. Structures of this size and scale are typical of rural residential properties within the agricultural zone and designation. Due to the location of the proposed structure on the property, it is unlikely that it would negatively impact neighbors' enjoyment of their own properties. Therefore, it is staff's opinion the requested relief for usable floor area and height can be considered minor, appropriate development for the site and meet the intent of the zoning bylaw and official plan. In summary, it is the professional opinion of staff that the proposed development, that has been a repeat, my apologies, meets the overall intent of Planning Act, Provincial Policy Statement, Official Plan, Zoning Bylaw, and the four tests for a minor variance. Staff support this application and recommend that it be approved.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of the committee to the planner? Is there an agent or applicant present? No?
Yes, Drew Fallowfield of Gerard Engineering on behalf of John Crucial.
Anything to add?
Not at this time.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of this committee to the applicant? Is there anyone present or online that wishes to speak to this application? Hearing and seeing none, what are the wishes of the committee? Phil moves to approve. And a seconder? Linda? Application ANPL 2023-315, the name of John Krischel. Moved by Phil, seconded by Linda, in accordance with Section 45(1) of the Planning Act, insufficient in...
Sorry, through the chair, if I
Oh.
might. I was going to point out
Okay.
minor typo on that
Minor
decision.
typo.
It looks like you figured that out.
So,
Thanks.
I just
Yeah.
reading it. So,
Yeah.
sufficient.
Alternate,
Sufficient?
alternate wording could be that it meets the four tests of the minor variance, yes. Apologies, everyone, that's a error on the report that was pulled through on the decision, so we'll have to make an amendment to reflect that.
Okay.
Thank you.
You got that? Good. I will scratch in as in insufficient. So sufficient information to consider the requested relief of to be appropriate for the proposed development, minor in nature, maintain the general intent of the official plan and the zoning bylaw, and that no public input was received and therefore has not been considered as part of this application. All in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. Andrew? Thank you. Okay, next up is ANPL 2024-086, Till Valley Farms Incorporated, and the planner can give the report, please.
Thank you. Through the chair, an application has been received to seek relief of 408 square meters in usable floor area for an accessory structure to allow an accessory structure with a usable floor area of 608 square meters resulting from a surplus farm dwelling severance BPNL 2023350. Subject lands are located on the southwestern side of the intersection of Plowman's Line and Bell Mills Side Road within the agricultural zone and designation. The existing lot has an area of 0.47 hectares with a frontage of 34.9 meters, varied width and a depth of approximately 114 meters. This lot was formed through a surplus farm dwellings consent application, as I say, BNPL 2023-350, approved by the Committee of Adjustment on February 21st, 2024. And this minor variance was a condition of that approval. Given that there was not feasible alternative but to include this outbuilding as part of the severance due to spatial separation of farm building, the form from a dwelling, and zoning restrictions in terms of required setbacks, as well as previously mentioned issues with the relative position of the barn and the existing septic bed, this minor variance is a condition of the previous severance, the proposal is considered to be appropriate and desirable in this instance. Whilst it is not considered that 3 times the maximum usable floor area is minor, as previously noted, there was no alternative but to sever this with the dwelling. The barn has been used as a pack barn, which did not house livestock, so it's unlikely to trigger MDS calculations. As such, in this instance, the usable floor area overage can be considered minor in the terms of the intent of the Planning Act, the PPS, the OP, and the zoning bylaws. And this file is recommended for approval. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of the committee to the planner? Is there an applicant or agent present?
Ian Vermeersch from Till Valley Farms.
Okay, thank you. Anything to add?
Not at this time.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of the committee to the applicant? Is there anyone present or online that wishes to speak to this application? Hearing none, what are the wishes of the committee?
I'll move to approve.
Tim moves to approve, seconded by
I'll second.
Linda. Thank you. File number AMPL 2024-086 in the name of Till Valley Farms Incorporated. The proposed application to permit relief for the agricultural zone meets the 4 tests of the minor variance. Application conforms to the general intent and purposes of the official plan, conforms to the general intent and purposes of the zoning bylaw, and is desirable for the appropriate development of the lands, is minor in nature, no public input was received, and therefore has not been considered as part of this application. All in favor? And that too is carried unanimously. And approved. And Drew. So these, we have 2 this time, Andrew, right? Okay. So file number BNPL 2024082 and ANPL 2024083 will be done simultaneously. We'll vote on them separately, and the planner can give the report, please.
Thank you. Through the chair, for file BNPL 2024082, an application has been received to sever a lot with a frontage of 243.7 meters and irregular depth and width and an overall lot area of 13.677 hectares. The land to be retained has a lot area of 47.75 hectares. This is a technical severance due to a merger on title. And for file ANPL 2024083, an application has been received to seek relief of 26.323 hectares in lot area to allow an agricultural lot of 13.677 hectares as a result of a technical severance. The subject lands are a property located to the northeast of Rhineland Road, southwest of Delhi, which have merged on title, but currently have 2 separate roll numbers, 2 separate PINs, and 2 separate civic addresses. One roll number describes the property being severed, which is with the civic address of 2762 Rhineland Road, and the property to be retained has municipal address of 1521 Second Concession Road, STR. Cumulatively, the area of the subject lands that has merged on title is just over 61 hectares, with frontages to both Rhineland Road and Second Concession Road. It is unclear when these lots merged, whether this happened at the time of the purchase of the adjacent farmland in the 1970s, a result of a consent to sever in the 1980s, or as a result of the site plan agreement in 2018. Realty have not been able to clarify this matter. The severed lands, i.e. 2762 Rhineland Road, has been in use as a cannabis production and processing facility with a farm building approved through site plan SPPL 2018225 and subject to site plan agreement AGNPL 2018255. The retained lands, i.e. 1521 Second Concession Road, is in use as an arable farm with single detached dwelling and a number of farm buildings. Neither the site plan nor the site plan agreement apply to the retained lands. With regard to conformity to policy direction regarding agricultural lot sizes in Norfolk County's official plan and zoning bylaw, the retained lands would be over the 40 hectares in lot size required by the provisions. However, the severed lot would be deficient by approximately 23 hectares. Whilst under normal circumstances, this might not be considered a minor deficiency, given this is a legal correction of deed due to an unrequested merger on title, and the subject lands are shown as a separate land parcel in terms of tax roll number PINs and civic addresses, it is considered that the requested minor variance would account for a previously existing, potentially legally non-conforming lot deficiency in this instance. As such, staff support this proposal and recommend approval of both the severance and the minor variance files. Just by way of update, condition 1B, which was requesting cash in lieu, does not apply in this situation and has been removed from the decision. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of the committee to the planner? Is there an applicant or an agent on? And does he have anything to add?
Good evening, and through you, Mr. Chair, Nathan Colomea. I'm the lawyer and agent for the owner applicant, Quanitz Farms. I thank you to planning staff for their excellent report, and we do ask that you approve both the severance and the minor variance. I did want to add one comment in support of the minor nature of the minor variance. This is something that's always confusing. The test for minor variance is not as to the quantum of the relief sought. If I ask you for relief of 1,000 hectares, that relief can still be minor. The test for the minorness of it, if that's even a word, is the impact. So the impact here is really nothing. If there are 2 separate operations, they've been treated as separate properties for over 50 years, and unfortunately there's a technicality that we have to deal with. So I do agree with staff's conclusion that it's minor, but to underscore that the test for whether it's minor is not the quantum of the relief sought, it's what is the potential impact if the relief is granted. And subject to your questions, that's all I have for you. Thank you.
Any questions of the committee? Linda?
No questions, but a comment. Thank you for pointing that out.
Any other questions of the committee to the agent? No? No? Mr. Mohammed, go ahead.
Through Mr. Chair, I would probably just provide a comment on that aspect. The question about whether it is minor or not, depending on whether it should be based on the quantity or impact, I would suggest that when there are some significant increase in quantity, there may have impact. And based on that, staff suggests whether it is minor or not. So it's not only the quantity, but because of the quantity, the impact they may, it may create.
Okay, thank you. Linda?
I just want to say I agree with what Mohammed just said.
Okay.
That sometimes the quantity may have a large impact,
Okay.
but
Thank
not
you.
always.
Thank you. Is there anyone? Oh, I'm sorry, Hannah. Uh-oh.
Thank you. Through the chair, this discussion is really exciting and always good to have in a public forum. I just can't help but also flag in terms of the official plan policies when it comes to lot size. There is official plan guidance on when lots are of a certain size and how we assess it's appropriate for things like farm splits. And the intent of that is to ensure that lots are of an appropriate size for the type of production that's happening. And there are measures to happen. Recognizing this is not a farm split, I just think it's important when we're talking about lot area and the agricultural designation, size can actually be an impact. So I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else to the applicant? Okay. Is there anyone present or online that wishes to speak to this application? And seeing and hearing none, what are the wishes of the committee? And we will do file number BNPL 2024082 first. That is the severance. Moved by Councillor Pass.
Yeah, I'd be happy to move the recommendation, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman.
A seconder?
Lisa will second.
Sorry?
I will second.
Okay, Lisa, thank you. So file number BNPL 2024082, Crowinets Farms. The application is consistent with the provincial policy statement, complies with the policies of Norfolk County official plan regarding the consent to sever policies in the agricultural designation, meets the intent of the zoning bylaw, and that no public input was received, and therefore has not been considered as part of this application. All in favor? And that is carried unanimously. I think I didn't sign a couple of those. Okay. Thank you. And next is file number ANPL 2024083, Crowinets Farms, and it's the minor variance, and mover and a seconder.
Mr. Chair, if,
I'm
as it's a
sorry?
separate application, if you could kindly pose the question again.
Okay.
If
Is there
wishes-
anyone present or online that wishes to speak to this application? Hearing or seeing none, thank you. Nice catch again. A mover and a seconder, please. Tim? Phil, thank you. This application is consistent with the provincial policy statement, complies with the policies of the Norfolk County official plan regarding the consent to sever policies in the agricultural designation, meets the intent of the zoning bylaw. No public input was received and therefore has not been considered as part of the application. All in favor? And that's carried unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Again, thank you. Too many things going on here. Okay. Next up, file number ANPL 2024-013, McLean's Master Carpentry Limited, and the planner can give the report, please.
Thank you. Through the chair, I'll be presenting this on behalf of my colleague Kendall. An application has been received to construct for the construction of a two-story accessory building requiring relief of 39 square meters from the maximum permitted usable floor area of 100 square meters to permit a usable floor area of 139 square meters, 3.5% from the maximum permitted lot coverage of 10% to permit a coverage of 13.5%, and 0.62 meters from the maximum height of an accessory building of 7 meters to permit a height of 7.62 meters. The subject lands are located on the northeast side of the intersection of Cedar Drive and Lochmore Avenue, having an approximate area of 877 square meters and a frontage of 12.2 meters on Cedar Drive. The property is zoned and designated resort residential and is adjacent to land zoned and designated provincially significant wetland. The subject lands are occupied by a single-story cottage and a shed that will be replaced by the proposed structure. The application states the intent of the minor variance is to construct a two-story garage with the second story to be used for storage. The subject application seeks to facilitate the construction of this two-story accessory building within the RR zone. This structure would replace the existing shed in the similar location on the property. The structure is in keeping with others in the area, and as such, the requested reliefs can be considered appropriate development for the lands. In addition, the relief sought for lot coverage and usable floor area can be considered relatively minor considering the size of the property and that the usable floor area includes the upper story of the building. The relief for height can also be considered minor, being that it is only 0.62 meters above the permitted height in the resort residential zone. As noted by the comments from the zoning administrator, relief is not required for the location of the proposed structure in the front yard, as it would be replacing an existing non-complying structure in the same location and would still meet the minimum required setbacks. However, the LPRCA have provided comments noting that the proposed development is not compliant with section 3.1.1 or 3.1.2 of the PPS, which limits the development of lands within hazardous areas and within areas that would be rendered inaccessible to people during times of flooding hazards, among others. Additional information was also provided regarding permits in Ontario Regulation 4124. A key concern was that due to the size and form of the structure, there is the potential for the structure to be used for habitable purposes. Upon discussion with the LPRCA and the applicant, staff are recommending deferral in order to provide the applicant time to discuss the comments with the LPRCA and consider their options regarding the design and concept. Therefore, the professional opinion of staff that this file be referred to a future meeting, deferred to a future meeting to provide this opportunity to the applicant. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there an agent or applicant present? Okay. Any questions of the committee to the planner? Does the agent or applicant have anything to add? No? And you're fine with the deferral? The agent indicates that she is fine with the deferral. Okay, thank you. Is there anyone present or online that wishes to speak to the application? No? Linda?
Just with regards to Long Point's comments, and I'll go back to staff have indicated that the relief that's being sought is minor, and Long Point's suggesting that the size of it could be used for a dwelling and you could say that on just about every garage or boathouse in Turkey Point. And given that the relief is minor in nature, the fact that the drawings that the applicant submitted, she wants to make it look aesthetically pleasing and like everybody else in Turkey Point, I don't feel this is any larger. In fact, it's probably smaller than some in Turkey Point. And they all look like they could be converted to a dwelling. And I see no reason to defer this application. I think Long Point's asking, or is going beyond their authority and asking the applicant to reduce the size when it's similar to everything else that's being done in Turkey Point. So I'm not supporting a deferral. I would suggest we approve the application, and that's just my comments.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Van Passen?
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chairman. I was going to follow that same track. I don't think there's a need to defer this. This committee's, the lane we are in is whether it's an appropriate build. And the same question comes up, and the permits from the Conservation Authority, that will all come up at the building department when they apply for the permit to build it. And the building department will put special conditions in to make sure that they're not building something that is habitable on the second floor. I've seen in the past where they don't allow any plumbing and minimal hydro, like you get one light bulb and that's about it, to make sure it is not a habitable space and used for storage. But that all comes at the building permit stage, and there's a little box that they have to check off that they get the approval from the Conservation Authority. So that argument, there's no reason to defer this application. This committee does its job. The argument with the Conservation Authority about how to make it so that they're happy, that will come at the building permit stage. So I will agree with Member DeHaan Crandon that I see no need to defer this. We can approve it, and the applicants will still have their battle, but it's not at this table. It's going to be at somebody else's table. So.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Andrew?
I would just say that this committee is supposed to keep in mind compliance and in accordance with provincial policy statement. We have a specialist agency saying it does not meet the PPS. Therefore, it wouldn't pass the 4 tests. So I guess the question is, what relevance does the PPS have to the committee if it's just going to be ignored, the fact that a specialist organization has said it is not in compliance?
I'm gonna ask the agent to come up and comment if I may. And just state your name, turn the mic on the button on the right, and state your name, please, just for the public record.
Sure. Sally Lane.
I'm sorry?
Sally Lane.
Okay, and you represent the applicant?
I am the applicant.
Okay, all right. And your comments to, would you prefer a deferral or?
No, I'd actually prefer it to be approved. That would be fantastic.
Okay.
I had a conversation with Long Point, and they had suggested that there's stairs outside. I was actually wanting the stairs inside anyway, so we're moving them inside. They were worried about one window being a bathroom window, and really it's just a window to look down the street, right on that side. So that
again, those would come at the building permit stage, as Councillor Van Passen would indicate. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? Linda?
So just with regards to planning staff's comments about the provincial policy statement, Long Point is they're saying it doesn't meet provincial policy based on the fact that they feel it could be converted into a habitable space, which the applicant has indicated it's for storage. And so I don't think we're not ignoring provincial policy. I feel that Long Point's comments are not appropriate with respect to their opinion that it's going to be converted. There's no reason to believe, just because it has a window or a patio door that's like a sliding door, it doesn't mean it's going to be a habitable space. And I can tell you, I have a sliding door in my cottage that isn't big enough to move certain furniture inside and out of. So people want wide doors because they're using it for storage, and you have to be able to get things in and out. And I can also tell you that storage is at a premium in Turkey Point, and At the end of the season, my garage and a 2-story shed is so full with stuff that we put out in the summer that you can hardly move in it. So I'm not ignoring provincial policy. I just feel that this is no larger or different than any other structure in Turkey Point, and I believe that it's going to be used for storage.
Okay, thank you. I'll go through the rest of my procedure here. Is there anyone present or online that wishes to speak to this application? And appears to be nobody. We have a recommendation for deferral in front of us. If the committee would like to propose an alternative or make that motion, I'll hear it now.
I'll move to approve.
Linda moves to approve. And a seconder? Councillor Van Passen, thank you. So file number ANPL 2024013 in the name of McLean's Master Carpentry Limited. The motion is approved, moved to approve by Linda and seconded by Councillor Van Passen. Can I get a vote, all in favor, please? And that is carried unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So you'll change the regions? Yeah, okay. Thank you. Okay, next up. File number ANPL 2024033, Brian Kahn and Pamela Lukes Kahn. And the planner can give the report, please.
Thank you. Through the chair, an application has been received to seek relief of 15% in lot coverage for a cottage to allow a cottage lot coverage of 30% and 2.67 meters in height to allow a boathouse with a total height of 7.67 meters in the resort residential zone. The subject lands are located on the southwestern side of Teal Ave with frontage and lot width of approximately 17 meters and a lot area of approximately 780 square meters. There is an existing newly built cottage on the land and an existing boat slip to the rear of the lot. The current cottage has a lot coverage of 15%. The proposal seeks to construct a deck at second floor level, which would also serve as an open covering above the existing boat slip, acting as a boathouse. As this deck is physically attached to the host cottage, it must be counted in the lot coverage for the cottage. And the proposed deck would result, therefore, in 30% lot coverage. This would be a relatively light construction open to all sides and would serve as a boathouse. However, due to zoning provision calculations, the property could still build an additional 10% of lot coverage in accessory structures for a potential 40% lot coverage. Relief is also sought for the overage in height, which would result in a total height of 7.67 meters. It is unusual to have a deck forming part of a cottage, but also forming the roof of a boathouse in terms of zoning provisions. So there would be no height overage if this was simply a deck forming part of the cottage. It is because it is also considered a boathouse that the issue arises. In this instance, the height can be considered minor, albeit just, as it is above the height for a boathouse, but under the height for a cottage. The lot coverage would not normally be considered minor, being double the zoning provision maximum. However, given this is a deck and not an extension or enlargement of the cottage itself, and is open to all sides, contained to the rear of the property, and would not be readily visible in the street scene, it is considered that this would meet the intent of the zoning bylaws. The official plan allows for improvement or extension of existing properties within the resort residential designation. Whilst this proposal is somewhat unique, being both part of the cottage and an accessory structure or boathouse at the same time, it is considered to be in line with the intent of the Lakeshore Special Policy Area Secondary Plan and the official plan. In summary, it's the professional opinion of staff that the proposed development meets the overall intent and purpose of the Planning Act, the PPS, the official plan, and the zoning bylaw. It's staff's opinion the application is minor and desirable for the appropriate development of the lands and is recommended for approval. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of the committee to the planner? Is there an agent or applicant present? Okay, anything to add? The applicant has nothing to add. Any questions of the committee to the applicant? Hearing none, we have a recommendation for approval. Can I get a motion or an alternative? Lisa?
Lisa moves to approve.
Thank you. And a seconder? Adam? File number AMPL 2024033 in the name of Brian and Pamela Kahn. In accordance with Section 45(1) of the Planning Act, this must be a typo. Insufficient information?
That should be sufficient.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Sufficient information to consider the requested relief to be appropriate for the proposed development, minor in nature, maintain the general intent of the official plan and the zoning bylaw. No public input was received and therefore has not been considered as part of this application. All in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you. And approved. Thank you. Okay, so next up we have file number ANPL 2024068 in the name of Douglas Pike. And the planner can give the report, please.
Thank you. Through the chair, I'll be presenting this on behalf of my colleague Kendall. An application has been received to construct an attached deck to an existing cottage requiring relief of 9% from the maximum permitted lot coverage of 15% to permit a coverage of 24%. The subject lands are located on the west side of Cedar Drive at the southern end The area of the subject lands is approximately 688 square meters with approximately 18 meters of frontage on Cedar Drive. The subject lands are occupied by a single-story dwelling, a shed, and a detached covered wood deck, and are zoned and designated resort residential. LPRCA have raised no concerns with this application as it relates to the requirements of Section 3.1 of the PPS. The proposed deck is similar to many others in the area, and therefore the proposed lot coverage relief can be considered minor and appropriate for the site. It is the professional opinion of staff the proposed development meets the overall intent and purpose of the Planning Act, the PPS, official plan, and zoning bylaws, and that the application is minor and desirable for the appropriate development of the lands. Staff support this application and recommend that it be approved.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of the committee to the planner? Is there an applicant or agent present? Anything to add, sir? He indicates nothing to add. Any questions of the committee to the applicant? Is there anyone present online or in the house that wishes to speak to this application? No? Thank you. We have a recommendation for approval. Mover and a seconder, please. Tim?
I'll move to approve.
And Phil can second. All right, thank you. File number ANPL 2024068 in the name of Douglas Pike. In accordance with Section 45(1) of the Planning Act, sufficient information was to consider the requested relief to be appropriate for the proposed development, minor in nature, maintain the general intent of the official plan and the zoning bylaw, and that no public input was received and therefore has not been considered as part of the application. All in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Approved. Okay, next up is file number BNPL 2023401, Jason Berry, Cole Miller, Ray Miller, and the planner can give the report, please.
Thank you. Through the chair, I'll be presenting this on behalf of my colleague Kendall. An application has been received to sever a parcel having a frontage of 68.61 meters, an irregular width and depth, and having an area of 7,327 square meters or 1.81 acres, and retain a parcel having an area of 89.89 hectares or 220 acres as the severance of a dwelling made surplus through farm amalgamation. The consent application is being reviewed concurrently with a zoning amendment for the retained lands to remove a single detached dwelling as a permitted use in the agricultural zone. The subject lands are located on the south side of Concession 13 Townsend, within 1 kilometre of the boundary between Norfolk County and Haldimand County, and spans from Concession 13 Townsend to Concession 14 Townsend. The area of the subject lands is approximately 87 hectares and are occupied by 2-story dwelling, 3 sheds, a Quonset hut, and a storage building. The application proposes to include the house and 3 sheds as part of the severed lands, while retaining the Quonset hut and storage building on the farmed lands. At this time, planning staff have not received sufficient proof to consider that the proposed severance meets the requirements of the PPS, specifically in regards to the farm being operated as one farming operation by the 3 purchasers. In addition, comments from building staff have raised concerns regarding the spatial separation requirements from farm buildings to property lines. This feedback may require the altering of the proposed property lines, the demolition of the farm structure, or compensating construction. Staff are supportive towards lot line amendments, which would result in reduced overall lot area. While the application in theory might be supported, this additional information is required in order to confirm that the dwelling meets the definition of a surplus farm dwelling as per the provincial policy statement. Staff have provided the comments from building staff and the request for additional information to the applicant. In summary, it is the professional opinion of staff that additional information is required to determine whether the proposed development does not currently meet the overall intent and purpose of the Planning Act, Provincial Policy Statement, Official Plan, and Zoning Bylaw. An amended set of conditions for this file has been circulated, I believe, to members. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the committee to the planner? And I see an agent is present. Sir, could you turn the, just a minute, turn the button on the right and state your name for the record, please.
Yeah, my name is Ed McCarthy. I'm a lawyer from Hagersville, and I represent the applicants here, Ray Miller, and his son-in-law, Jason Berry, is with him, and the other applicant is Cole Miller, Ray's son. I don't know whether you have the, well, first of all, I might say that we're not really in favor of deferring this, and I'd like the committee to decide whether a deferral is actually needed or not. I'm not sure what all material you've been provided, but on March the 20th, we sent staff a list of all the properties that the applicants own between them. And they own several hundred acres in Haldimand and Norfolk. And between the 3 of them, they also rent some land. Between the 3 of them, they operate 1,800 acres of farmland. Now, the problem that we have here relates to the fact that these 3 gentlemen each own farms in their own right. And if either one of them was applying separately, there probably wouldn't be an issue. The issue is the 3 of them are buying this farm as partnership property. So in the typical situation, if one of them was applying for this severance, then they would be buying this farm from the Miklovics, and it would be simply an additional farm that they would add to their existing farm, and they wouldn't need the house, so the house would be eligible for severance as a surplus farmhouse. So what's happening here is that the 3 of them are in effect buying a 1/3 interest in this farm. And this 1/3 interest will be added to their existing separate individual farm operations. So instead of in the normal have 100% interest in the farm they're buying being added to their existing farm operation, in this situation, a third interest in the farm that they're buying is being added to their existing farm operation. So, you know, the question is, does that comply with the official plan and the provincial policy statement? And I submit that it does. I mean, as I said, if any one of the three of them applied individually, there'd be no question. So I'd hope you wouldn't force us to do that, because what would happen then is, when it was all said and done, this farm would just get deeded from that individual to the three of them. So I'm submitting to you that you know, we certainly have to comply with the official plan and the provincial policy statement. So these people are, by buying this farm, which they'll operate as partnership property, a third interest in that property will be added to each one of their existing farm operations. So I'm submitting that in that sense, the application complies both with the official plan and the provincial policy statement. Well, that's the crux of our position. So,
Okay, thank you.
Pleased to answer any questions if you have.
Any questions of the committee to the applicant? Adam?
Thanks, Chair. Through you to Mr. McCarthy there. So, I mean, this can't be the first time in history that this has happened. What is a typical way that this is treated by a provincial policy statement?
Is this the typical way?
No, like what I'm saying is this can't be the first time ever that this scenario has arisen in the history of farming. Like what is normally viewed as appropriate?
Well, it's the first time it's come across in my practice, but...
okay, so would staff have what is normally done here?
Anna?
Thank you. So through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Very. So I can speak on my experience as someone who's worked with the county since late 2021 and have had the opportunity to do a lot of surplus farm severances. In my experience, what I've seen typically are either individual purchasers or farming operations that have multiple people. As we understand, farms can be complex. And what they use are, they establish corporations. So as a means of verification, what I've done in the past is I've requested articles of amalgamation, which demonstrate that the person who's signing the application has the ability to bind that corporation. And that's been a consistent practice since I've been here at the county. It also puts the person and links it to the organization, and we link that organization to the parcel that's subject of the application, and we verify the property ownership through two methods. We use our Norfolk County's GIS, which pulls from MPAC. So within MPAC, I can access everything that's on Norfolk County, but what I can't do is access other municipalities' records on MPAC. So that answers your question, and I do have my own kind of response and points, but is that something you want to hear now?
You can see where this goes, okay.
Would you like to? Okay. So what I'll continue and clarify is that there are kind of 3 points of contention that I see in evaluating the application. So there's the piece on individual ownership, which Mr. McCarthy noted. It's not an issue, it wouldn't necessarily be automatically accepted. The key item is that we need some sort of proof that demonstrates the people involved in the application own the properties that are on the application, and those properties have homes on it. And at this time, because I can't access it through GIS, and because I can't access it through MPAC, I can't verify that. It could very well be true, but I don't have a means to do that. We also circulated to Haldeman County because this property is within 1 kilometer of their boundary. Unfortunately, they did not respond to our request for comment, so we will work to follow up with them and get feedback on that piece and see if that's a way that we can verify the ownership details. Second is the nature of the entity. So the provincial policy statement outlines when severances can happen. And as you all know, it states a residence surplus to a farming operation as a result of farm consolidation, provided it meets some key tests. One being that the new lot is limited to a minimum size needed to accommodate the use and appropriate sewage and water services, and then that the retained lands are prohibited from having a new residence placed. And a residence surplus to a farming operation is defined in the provincial policy statement. And that definition is that it means an existing habitable farm residence that is rendered surplus as a result of farm consolidation, which means the acquisition of additional farm parcels to be operated as one farm operation. So back in, I would say, late February, early March, I had some long discussions with the applicant and the property owner about this piece. And what I would say is that there is just a difference in professional opinion on when a single farm operation is happening. So for me, my interpretation is that we need some sort of demonstration that they're operating as an operation together. Like, it's not just three random people who are purchasing property, severing homes, and then doing something else, right? We need some sort of proof. Typically, we see that through an articles of incorporation. We see it's a corporation. Unfortunately, that was not something that was provided at the time of the application submission. If that's an option, if that is of interest to the applicant. I would say my understanding of the applicant's interpretation is it happens when the property is purchased, and that's when it becomes a single entity. So we spoke briefly this morning about how that might be demonstrated through documentation. I don't believe I've received one of the options you offered, and I don't remember the technical term, but the key thing to understand is that there is an interest of staff to find a solution and understand how that farm operation as a single entity is demonstrated in paper. And then the third thing that would be a reason for a deferral or recommendation for deferral by staff is we have these technical comments received from the building department, which can have an impact on size. So the nature or the size of the severed parcel, there are, as we've reflected provincial policy statement policies which, require that we keep them to a relatively minimum size needed for the use. And the official plan of Norfolk County provides further guidance on why that is. So if there's an opportunity for flexibility, while also perhaps addressing spatial separation requirements from the building department, I would see that as a win-win. So to conclude or summarize my points, I completely understand the applicant's desire for an approval, but I would request or suggest that in an effort to be consistent with my interpretation of the policy and my colleagues who is not here today, and be consistent with how we approach other applicants, that a deferral is maintained so we can work with the applicant and perhaps Haldeman County in finding a solution and making sure that we're being consistent with those policies. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you for your time.
May I ask a follow-up there, Mr. Chair, while I have the floor?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so through you to Hannah then, you mentioned that some of the information has not come forward. If you had that information, would it be easier for you to get to a point where you can recommend approval?
Through the chair, do you mean today at this moment?
Well, you said that there's some information that you've requested that you've not yet received, whether it's from the applicant or from Haldeman County or whatever. So am I right in understanding that had you had that information, it would have been easier for you to recommend approval? Potentially recommend approval?
Through the chair, yes, that's correct. So really, it's this documentation that's been requested to ensure we understand that the people involved in the application own the properties that they own, and that information is consistent with how we address other applications. And we understand that all those three parties involved are a single farm operation. Okay. So yes.
That's it for me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Van Passen.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chairman. I could probably vouch. I've met these gentlemen before. They do live in Haldeman. They own farms. They work land. But your whole explanation on that key thing that turns in my mind is operated as one farm operation. I drove by there on Sunday. I think that there was one of each of you out there doing something with a different tractor, because one's got, and it is father, son, and son-in-law, right? It's, I suppose there's a son and a son-in-law do as they're told, and daddy tells them what to do, but they do operate as one farm operation, and I don't think there's a need to wait for Haldeman to tell you that, unless if you trust my word of, I know these gentlemen and they do work together, and, you know, there is a difference, again, between the wording in the PPS about operated as one farm operation and amalgamated, right? So it's legally, it's not two operations that are amalgamated, but since they do operate it as one farm operation, I think it does meet the test. So, again, I think when you do get a hold of Haldeman and they tell you, they'll let you know where they live and what they do, and yeah, they've got a bit of dirt around Jarvis, and I'm sure it's going to be okay. So,
well, I guess, Mr. Chairman, that and members of the committee, that staff's not prepared to accept our position or my word that they own these farms, and that in Haldeman and in Norfolk, and you know, I've sent lists of the information to staff, and as far as them trying to get information from Haldeman, that probably will never happen. So, and on the question of the you know, on Friday we got the email from the building department about they're concerned about some fire separation with this Quonset hut, which I have a hard time getting my mind around. But I noticed that the staff have addressed that by a condition in the one of the conditions that would be imposed if you're otherwise prepared to approve the application. So that disposes of that matter, and we can deal with that, whether we got to put some fire-resistant material in this building or move it or whatever we have to do. We're prepared to do that. But all I can say is I can confirm, because I've been involved with these people for years, they do own farms in Haldeman and in Norfolk. Jason Vere has a farm with a house on it. So does Cole Miller. And, you know, in their individual right, like I said before, they would, if they were just applying in their own singular, you know, just each one of them, they'd be entitled to this thing because there's no issue, but it's just the fact that, you know, they're going together as a partnership. And, you know, staff said, well, they're not incorporated. By the very fact they're going to operate this farm they're buying in partnership with a view to profit, but that's the classic definition of what a partnership is. So they're going to be stuck with being partners under the Income Tax Act and the common law, whether they like it or not. So it's going to be operated as a partnership, but the partnership profits, hopefully there are some, will be divided equally between the three of them and added to their existing operations. So that's about all I can tell you.
Thank you. Councillor Van Passen.
well, I do have a question for the applicants that, do they understand that condition that they would have to meet because the Quonset hut, the steel front of that is less than 30 meters from the new proposed property line? You have to keep the building inspector happy that it's fireproof to whatever extent is required under that regulation of the building code. So you would have the option of providing 30 meters, but I think the 30 meters would put you pretty darn near close to the house to put the property line that far. So as long as you're going to accept that condition, that like maybe you got to put 2 layers of steel on the front of that building instead of just one to keep the fire department happy, but you have to do that one way or the other or move that building, right? So as long as you're accepting or happy with that condition and you'll deal with it, then I'd be happy to deal with this application tonight rather than anything else. So.
Well, we're not happy with that, but we accept it.
Okay. Linda.
I was just going to say that I kind of agree with what the agent's saying. If one of them was applying individually, there would be no issue with this application. The fact that they're applying all three together seems to be complicating things. And in order to prove ownership, would a simple copy of a tax bill not accomplish that?
Through the chair, if there was documentation which confirmed the person's ownership to the property referenced and then a way of demonstrating that the property has indeed a house on it, that would be no problem. Yeah.
So are you suggesting we add that as a condition that a simple tax bill?
Actually, not just yet.
Okay.
But the applicants could provide that as a courtesy to staff. With regards to, and I know we've gotten into this debate in the past, maybe before your time, but with regards to the requirement that the farm has to have a house on it, I don't know, we've debated this in the past, and if it's a corporate farm and the owners all live in an urban area and don't need a farm on, or a home on any of those farms, there's nothing to say that I recall that there has to be a farm or a house on one of them. If it's surplus to the farm operation, it's surplus to the farm operation. And I do believe in the past we have approved a severance in that same instance. However, the agent is saying that there are farm or homes on the
He's perfectly candid. The Jason Very has a farm with a house on it. Cole Miller has a farm with a house on it. Ray Miller lives in a house from the family farm, and we had to sever the farm off in order for him to buy a farm. Had to sever the farm off and put it in his wife's name in order for him to buy a farm abutting. So Ray's house is on a separate lot right adjacent to the family farm, which is in his wife's name. So that's the only thing out of the ordinary.
Okay.
okay.
So 2 of the 3 of them have got farms with houses on them.
Okay, but I'm gonna go back to the past where it wasn't clear or committee was not convinced that there is a requirement that one of the farms has to have a house on it. And I'm sure in the past we have approved a severance in a corporate situation where all the homes were surplus. So that's just my comment, and I'm willing to approve this tonight.
Okay, anybody else? Adam?
Yeah, so thanks, Chair. I'm actually not against the application, but I'm not going to vote to approve it because all staff's asking for is documentation. That's it. So I understand Councillor Van Passen is saying he knows him, he vouches him, but like, what happens when we have the next application where there's not someone at the table who happens to know the person? Like, that's not I don't think a way for the committee to make decisions on applications is to go, I happen to know the guy and I can vouch for him. That's not a thing. Like, I trust Chris for sure, but what I don't want is to have this committee start to make decisions based on just trust me, it's okay. Like, that's not a thing. So I feel like with the minor amount of documentation that staff is requesting, this shouldn't be a problem. And as soon as that documentation is provided, we'll be happy to approve it.
Or we could add it as a condition to the approval.
Either way, but I don't think there should be an approval just based on, no, it's all good. Like, that's not a thing. We have to have the documentation.
That's the way I would recommend that we go.
I'm fine with that, but just an outright approval, not a chance.
Add a condition to the approval.
That's okay.
Even as
I
simple.
thought they might take a lawyer's word for it, but I guess you can't.
I know, yeah.
Can't accept that.
Something as simple as a tax bill that shows the. I'm sure you can come up with something.
I have them here. The tax bill shows, residence and farm, residential assessment and farm assessment.
Okay. Councillor Van Passen, last time.
I just want to ask you, when did you actually file this application?
November.
So December, January, February, March, April, May, 7 months. And nobody could call and say, we need that extra information. We've called the county alderman, they can't get it. It takes 7 months, and now we're sitting here today and we're going to defer this for another meeting cycle because in 7 months, nobody could phone the applicant, tell them they needed this more information, prod the Haldeman County to get it. No, I'm not going to wait another month because we've already waited 7. That makes no sense to me. So if you want a condition on there that they will deliver it, you can probably hand it to the secretary from the committee yet tonight. So.
Okay, thank you. Lisa, did you?
No, I was just going to, somebody.
Too many microphones.
I was just gonna agree that we put in a condition and we make it a move for an approval, because I think that that's more than fair at this point in time. It sounds like they have the documentation. Doesn't seem like we need to be deferring anything.
Through the chair, the question is how the condition could be worded. So looking to Mohammed, if you feel like jumping in. I would note there's 3 purchasers, so ownership of those 3 parties and connecting them to the properties noted on the application and demonstrating that the properties have homes on them. That would be how I would word the condition in some form. Go ahead, Mohammed. I also want to clarify, the requested information was noted at time of the application being submitted and reiterated in February and March. So I just feel like it should be stated publicly. Staff has requested that information in the past.
This is a very
Thank
basic
you.
requirement for surplus dwelling. Any surplus dwelling application, at the very beginning of the applications, we do ask for documents, and that includes the existing house on the existing agricultural land. So this is a very basic requirement.
And I'll just...
It's hard to believe that staff did not ask for it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Is that it? Okay, good. Anybody, is there anyone present? Oh, Linda, go ahead.
I would just like to remove the existing house piece, because I don't think that's necessary.
So, Mr. Chair, in that case, in the decision, I think it should also mention that the interpretation of the PPS policy, I mean, the committee believes that the PPS policy interpretation is no house is required on existing agricultural land. I think that's where staff interpretation is different, so it should be clear that committee believes otherwise.
Okay. Is there anyone present that wishes to speak to this application or online? We have a motion or a recommendation for deferral. Would the committee like to make that motion or propose an alternative? Lisa.
We kind of already said so. I would like to move for approval with the condition
With the
added for the
proof of joint
yeah.
ownership, I have down for
Yep,
simplification.
I would like to move
I'm
for
sure
approval
that
with that.
Sherry will come up with something with more specifics. Okay, so Lisa moves for approval, and a seconder, please. Councillor Van Passen, thank you.
Through the chair, sorry to jump in. I just want to confirm that this is for the amended set of conditions that was circulated this afternoon?
Yes.
Okay.
And we've added one more for joint ownership
So-
documentation. Yes, please.
If one of the individuals owns a house that has been severed off of the farm,
Can you turn your mic on?
the zoning on that house will still be agricultural zoning, right?
So the houses are existing in Haldeman County, so I can't speak to what they would be in Haldeman County without confidence, sorry.
I don't want to find out later that, oh, we're going to call that house a residential lot, and, oh, then it doesn't count. But we've been through that debate over the last 20 years, you know. Wasn't that long ago that one of the considerations whether the dwelling unit had to exist in Norfolk, and we're going, no, they could own farms in Norfolk and Haldeman, or Norfolk and Brant, or Norfolk and Oxford, or Norfolk and Elgin, and that didn't change that long ago. So
I don't think the soybeans care whether they're in Haldeman or Norfolk.
Just to clarify that point, so the documentation I submit is going to show that Ray Miller's got a house on an acre of land. It's zoned agricultural, but he hasn't got a farm that's got a house on it. He's got, his farmland was severed off, but the other two have houses on their farms.
I think the documentation you're going to submit is to this property to show that the three of them own it jointly. Correct?
Well, they will when the deal closes.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay?
But I think that's what we want to clarify. It doesn't say in my recollection of any of the rules that you have to own a farm with a house on it. You have to own a farm in Norfolk County, you have to own a house in Norfolk County, or a farm in Haldeman and a house in Haldeman in the agricultural zone. You can't, that's where they drew the line, that you couldn't own a house in town, and from Linda's recollection, they've got around that before, but that was the original sort of interpretation of the rule. You own a house and as many farms as you want, you only need one house.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor.
Read it backwards.
So the motion on the floor is that the file, or the application BNPL 2023-401 be approved, subject to conditions, and we've added the one condition of proof of joint ownership. And the other amended condition was number 3, Hannah? The fire safety, sorry? Okay, it's already been added. So we've added one more condition ourselves. To be amended to the amended application, proof of joint ownership. Okay? So I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that is approved.
Thank you very much, Committee members.
Oh, Lisa and Chris, Councillor Van Passen. Oops. Signed the wrong spot. Okay. Oh, you want to put that with it? Okay. So next up, we have 2, right? Andrew? All 3 together. Okay. So we have 3 applications to finish off the evening. File number BNPL 2023-370, 369, or ANPL 2023-369, and ANPL 203404. Perry Poirier and Caitlin Gilmet. Close enough? And the planner can give the report, please.
Thank you. Through the chair, for file BNPL 2023-370, an application has been received to sever a piece of land with a frontage of 20.23 meters, a varied width between 20.23 meters and 21.95 meters, a depth of 45.72 meters, and an overall lot area of 957.6 square meters, leaving a retained lot measuring 883.5 square meters within the resort residential zone and designation. For file ANPL 2023-369, an application has been received to sever apologies, that's repeated the, and for ANPL 2023-404, an application has been received to seek relief for the retained lands resulting from potential severance BNPL 2023-370 of 0.31 hectares in lot size to allow a lot size of 883.5 square meters, 5.8% in lot coverage to allow for a lot coverage of 20.8%, 0.67 meters for an accessory structure within a required side yard to allow for a setback of 0.53 meters and 0.9 meters in total height to allow a total height of 10 meters. The subject lands are located east of Highway 59 between Hastings Drive and Lakeshore Road on the causeway into Long Point. The area of the subject land is approximately 0.45 acres with approximately 40 meters of frontage on Highway 59. The subject lands are occupied by an existing vacation home with a detached garage. The land is zoned resort residential and designated hazard lands in the official plan. The Long Point Region Conservation Authority mapping identifies the subject lands as being within the 100-year flood hazard limit and 100-year flood hazard limit and the flood hazard limit. The intent of the applications are to facilitate the creation of a new lot for the construction of a new residential unit. The subject lands are in LPRCA's flood hazard, however, are not in a floodplain. The subject lands are located within a natural heritage feature area, and as such, an environmental impact study will be needed to be completed by a qualified professional, and the recommendations of that report be followed. Planning staff identified through provincial screening criteria that an archaeological assessment also needs to be completed. A circulation comment received by the LPRCA has advised that the subject severance is not consistent with sections 3.1 and 3.11 and 3.1.2 of the PPS. It has confirmed that there is no safe access and that this is an area of high flood risk and dynamic beach hazards, and therefore it is not in compliance with the PPS. Section 7.6 of the official plan provides guidance on development within resort designation, highlighting that infill development on existing lots of record are permitted. Additionally, lands within the resort residential designation are identified as hazard lands by the LPRCA and as such are subject to official plan policies for hazardous land. New development on hazardous land is limited due to the potential risk to human health and safety and is subject to consultation with the Conservation Authority. Section 6.8.1 of the official plan clarifies how the policies in the Lakeshore Special Policy Area Secondary Plan should be understood, that where a conflict arises between the Part 1 of the primary plan and the Lakeshore Special Policy Area Secondary Plan, the policies of the Lakeshore Special Policy Area Secondary Plan shall prevail. As stated by section 11.3.2.3.g, infill development, i.e. lot severances, are only permitted in the resort area of Normandale, which is unique from other resort areas due to it being comprised of properties within both the hamlet and resort designation. In summary, it's staff's opinion that the creation of a new lot to facilitate additional infill development on the subject lands is not consistent with the direction of Norfolk County's official plan and the Lakeshore Special Policy Area Secondary Plan. With regard to the requested variances in terms of lot area, it's staff's opinion that while the proposed size reflects many lots, they are associated with the retained and proposed severed lands of a severance that has been identified as inconsistent with the planning policy statement, the official plan, and the Lakeshore Special Policy Area Secondary Plan policies. Consequently, the minor variances can be understood as facilitating the formation of a new lot without safe access being demonstrated, and as such is not desirable for the appropriate development of the lands or meet the intent of the official plan. In summary, it is the professional opinion of staff that the proposed severance does not meet the overall intent and purpose of the Planning Act, the PPS, the official plan, or the Lakeshore Special Policy Area Secondary Plan, and is recommended for refusal. The two minor variants proposed would not meet the four tests for a minor variance, as they do not accord with the official plan, nor are they considered desirable for the appropriate development of the land. Again, both of these minor variances are recommended for refusal. It should be noted that an appeal has been lodged with the OLT for a lot with very similar constraints by the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing against a previous Committee of Adjustment file at this stage. I can't go into any more detail because we've not done our half of it yet. But I just wanted to bring you up to date. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the committee to the planner? Linda?
I just wondered what you mean by you haven't done your half of it yet.
When we receive initial documentation for an appeal, we have to pull together a full package with various things, affidavits, all the policy information. So that hasn't been formally signed off by the clerk's office yet to be submitted to the OLT. So at this stage, we've been notified that there's something happening, but the council itself hasn't done its piece yet, because this was only Thursday last week.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions of the committee to the planner? Councillor Van Passen?
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chairman. I got a question about whether there's even a need to be here. It looks to me that as a plan of subdivision, that if they were asking, well, I know why it's here, if they didn't have the little zigzag in that boundary and there's two separate lots there that have merged in title or not merged in title, and, you know, my understanding of that old rule of once a lot, always a lot, I'd like to know whether there's even a need to be here, whether they are actually one lot or actually two. Because if it's a plan of subdivision and it's never been deemed by the county or put under part lot control, they are still two separate lots. So is there any information or detail on that?
Does the planning staff have any information pertaining to that?
No, because it's quite difficult given that most of these areas were developed in the 1920s and 30s. There isn't any specific records for a number of these lot formations.
Okay. Suggest it was probably in the 50s.
Maybe the
causeway wasn't there back then.
Maybe the applicant can add to that.
Good evening. My name is Perry Poirier. This is my wife, Caitlin Gilmet. We're the owners of 802 Highway 59, lots 9 and 10. I've put together a little bit of a spiel that I'll kind of go through. Maybe it'll answer some of your questions as I go through it. We purchased 802 Highway 59 in 2019. In 2020, we did extensive renovations working alongside Long Point Conservation and Norfolk County to improve the current structure on Lot 9. Weekends are a steady flow of family and friends coming to visit beautiful Long Point. The goal of returning Lot 9 and 10 to two separate lots would be keep both properties in our family. Looking at the documents prepared by staff, I can't help but feel that we'd be throwing a curveball here in the final stages of restoring lots 9 and 10 to being two separate lots. Talks with planners dating back to as early as January 5th, 2022, only stated that an environmental impact study might be required to complete this process. There was never any indication that the staff did not support separating lots 9 and 10. Consequently, Caitlin and myself have now invested over $30,000 and many hours of time getting this application to this stage. The report prepared for tonight's meeting by the planning department is an act of bad faith and contradicts previous communications. A common theme throughout the document is the use of the word hazard lands. Lot 9 and 10 are zoned resort residential. They are not zoned hazard lands. There is reference throughout the document that all of Long Point and Turkey Point is to be considered hazard lands. You'll see in the handout I've supplied that there is dozens of recently built new homes in Long Point and Turkey Point area. Some of these homes are constructed right on a dynamic beach and only 30 feet away from the shoreline of the main lake. How do these homes comply with the official plan? If anything, I would argue that our location is superior than most of the newly constructed homes, as we are located 2.4 kilometers away from the main lake. Our property is protected by a large retaining wall in the east, and a large berm runs parallel to the causeway on the west. In the event of a historic storm, the current structure on Lot 10 poses more of a safety hazard to the causeway than a new build would. The current structure on Lot 10 sits below grade and is lower than the road. Developing of Lot 10 guarantees a safer passage for the people of Long Point. Building a new home that is engineered for the location, meets the Long Point Conservation high water mark, and raising the grade will help ensure the safety of others protecting the infrastructure of the causeway. I would like to point out that the neighbors on either side of us have both constructed brand new builds, one being a 2-story home with an attached garage and the other being a detached garage. We are seeking to do a similar project, as our neighbors were able to do: restore Lot 10, remove the current structure, and build a new one. As it stands right now, we would be able to construct a new garage on Lot 10 that doesn't have to meet the high water level mark set by Long Point Conservation. However, building a new vacation home that is engineered and surpasses the Long Point Conservation high water level mark is being presented as a problem. I can't make sense of this logic. Under Norfolk County's official plan, Long Point falls under the Lakeshore Special Policy Area. I can support why an environmental impact study would be required. I can't seem to understand how now an archaeological assessment is now being requested in the conditions. Talks with planning only ever mentioned doing an environmental impact study. Are all new developments on Long Point having to go through an archaeological assessment now? Speaking with some residents that have recently built newer homes, this was never required of them. My understanding under the Provincial Planning Act is that an archaeological impact study is typically required for large-scale projects like subdivisions, roads, and quarries. Under the official plan, section 7.6.2, it states that infilling in existing lots of record for the purpose of dwellings of vacation homes for seasonal use may be permitted. Proposals for development in this regard must recognize the hazards that exist and construed in such a manner that the risk to the occupants and the structure is reduced. The Conservation Authority shall be consulted to determine the appropriate methods to minimize risk. Lot 10 is an existing lot on record. We are not creating a new lot. Unfortunately, the previous owner, when it was purchased, let it merge on title. As I drove around Long Point and Turkey Point yesterday gathering pictures of the new developments, I think it's clear that there's been a precedent set, that new development is permitted and is actively taking place throughout Long Point and Turkey Point. The severing and developing of Lot 10 will add value to the county in the form of new tax dollars, help create a safer route of passage for Long Point, and showcasing that Norfolk County can be a leader in developing while protecting the natural features in Norfolk. I would like to thank the Committee of Adjustment for their time and consideration.
Thank you. Anything from the committee to the applicant? So you said that and I'll go back to Councillor Van Passen's analogy of once a lot, always a lot. So these lots were separated at one time and have been merged on title by a previous owner?
Yes, the previous owner to us purchased the lot, and then it was unfortunately merged on title at that time.
So would you not just go through the registry office to get them separated again? No, that's not how it works? Okay.
So just to be clear, Mr. Chair, if the purpose is to build a building, whether it is 2 lot or 1 lot, it would probably not permitted because of the policies. So it doesn't matter whether there are 2 lots or 1 lots. If the intention is to build, then you're not permitted to have any building that is habitable on this land based on the policies.
What policy is that, sorry?
Well, I mean, Andrew already mentioned, I can do that again. It is very clear.
So we originally tried to put in a garage with a loft above it. You guys said that was not doable. And when we talked with planning, we said, what if we were to sever the lot and go down that road and build another residence? That we were told at that time that that was doable. We've gone through all this paperwork, we've gone through all these motions with you guys in the hopes, and I'm talking, thank you.
Sure, go ahead.
In the hopes that we were going to get to a final stage here because you led us on to believe that this was fully feasible to do. And we get a report that comes out on Thursday saying that you guys have fully refused this. I don't understand how that happens.
Okay.
Through Mr. Chair, the communication that you mentioned, we are not aware of that. You have to provide a proof and then we can work on that. But that is a completely separate issue. We are not discussing about this development, right? And that development decision will be based on the policies in hand. The communication problem, definitely it can have, and we can look at that when you provide us some documents. So at this time, we don't have that. So we'll not discuss about that. I'll go through some of the, if Mr. Chair, give me some permission. I'll go through the policies again, just to clarify, and I'll also mention some of my comments. In the PPS policy, it's clearly mentioned, Andrew already provided, I'm going to tell again since this is recorded. It is not consistent based on policy 3.1.1 which provides the development shall generally be directed outside of hazardous land adjacent to shoreline of Great Lakes, St. Lawrence River system, and large intake lakes, which are impacted by flooding hazard. The development is not also consistent with policy 3.1.3c of the policy, which provides that the development and site alteration shall not be permitted within these areas. It is not consistent with the policy 2.1.8 of the policy, which provides the development and site alteration shall not be permitted adjacent to natural features, in this case PSW. And if you see in the screen, if you can go to this land is surrounding by PSW all around. It's a basin. If you zoom out, you'll see that the whole area is within the hazard land, within the shoreline floodplain. It does not conform with a number of offshore plan policies. Within that 7.3.2.2 shoreline areas, development is not permitted. Whether you have a lot or not, whether you want to create a lot or not, the development will not be permitted because of safe access issue. 7.6.2, which is the designation residential resort residential area. In the resort residential areas, Andrew mentioned, except one location, all the resort residential area are considered as hazard land. And based on the policies, county must consult with LPRCA to provide before providing an approval. With all these policies, loud and clear, in this area, the policy does not allow to have a development because of these issues. I would add a few other things. I mean, in the last few meetings also, we saw that there is a consistent pattern that the committee is disregarding the policies that are interpreted by technical experts. And we have seen, as Andrew mentioned also, that this is creating some issues. One of them is the opportunity for appeal from other organizations. From technical experts, we can confidently say that we'd have serious trouble to defend ourselves as a committee and as a county if this kind of appeal happens. Ultimately, it would be the taxpayers' money which would be lost. And I'll leave that at that point. Thanks.
You. Tim?
Yeah, I just have a question about so when they built the condos down at the corner, that was completely new development in resort residential. So I'm just wondering how they were allowed to do that.
Through Mr. Chair, as far as I remember, that was also a refusal from staff, and the council approved that. And it went through another appeal probably. I cannot confirm that, but I can confirm that staff was recommending refusal for that development as well.
Okay. Anything else to the committee? Linda?
I was just going to comment that you've provided a number of photos here, but some of these it's a little bit different situation because it's redevelopment of an existing, there may have been a cottage on the property and you're allowed to redevelop. Yours is different and you're asking for a severance. So from the committee's perspective, like that is a little bit different. However, based on the fact that they were individual lots at one time, it's something that I would consider supporting.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Is there anyone present or on the line that wishes to speak to this application? Hearing none, we have three applications. We'll go through them one by one, and we'll deal with the severance first. And now we have a recommendation for refusal. Can I get that motion or a alternative? So we have a recommendation for refusal in front of us. Can I get that, either that motion made or a alternative? Councillor Van Passen?
I do have I'd be happy to recommend approval of the application, but only if it is on the original lot lines. The application we have, it takes that little zigzag on there. That's not the original lot line. Now, is that too big a change from what was circulated? Like, would we have to recirculate an application?
I would guess yes.
Or are we good to go on, because it is the original lot lines, so the descriptions are there, but that's the only one I'll support, not the changes.
Staff? Oh, too many mic.
I'm just looking at it. I would think ideally it should be re-advertised. However, I think it's a reduction in the amount of land forming. If you were to go to the original lot lines, it would be a reduction in the amount being asked for as part of the severance. But that said, because this is a consent, it would be better to be safe than sorry and actually re-advertise it. It's not just sort of a minor variance and, oh, we're bringing it down by half a meter, so we don't need to re-advertise. I think on a consent, it would be far better to re-advertise it, just to be safe.
Counselor? Oh, too many microphones are on.
Oh, sorry.
I guess the question, is it legal to not re-advertise it? Like, does that meet the standards
Well, I
of
think
the
the staff's
provincial
opinion
policy
is that
statement, right?
to be on the safe side, we should defer it and repost it at the very least. Linda?
I'm just going to suggest another option would be we could consider the severance tonight because it's being reduced in what's being asked for. And the minor variances perhaps maybe need to be recirculated because the calculations would be different.
Does staff have an opinion on that? Mohammed, your microphone is on? Oh, okay.
No, I don't have any comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Andrew? No further comment? Okay.
No, don't think so.
Linda?
Okay, well, I'll move to approve the severance amended to be the original lots, as Councillor Van Passen had indicated, and to defer the zoning bylaw amendments or the minor variance applications to be recirculated for the proper calculations.
Okay, so Linda moves, and a seconder? Councillor Van Passen? Sure thing, go ahead.
So through you, Chair, to, I don't know who at this point, staff, what are the implications of doing this? Like you've mentioned before about this tribunal issue and that, you know, we can't defend this. Like, is this part of what we can't defend, or can we defend this decision if we have to? I'm sort of lost the plot here a little bit.
Through Mr. Chair, yes, I can confidently say that it would be extremely difficult to support by staff, and eventually county will not get any planner to support it, and potentially county will lose that. It will happen for previous, if we received any appeal for previous appeal, and it will happen for, if it happens for this one. And I can confirm that the ministry probably will watch this meeting as well, and potentially there will be another appeal. It is very clear in the policy that it does not permit any development, whether it's 2 lot or 1 lot. There will be no development here, no new development on the hazard land.
I understand that. I guess my question is really specific to the severance that we've got now a motion to approve the severance with conditions. I just want to know about that. Is that something that is going to be problematic, just the severance?
Yes, through Mr. Chair, severance will also be considered as a development under the PPS definition. So if it is approved to sever this land, then it does not consistent with PPS policy, and there is a high chance that other organizations may appeal this decision as well.
Thank you very much. We've heard it now from staff that here we go.
Lisa?
Through the chair, I guess my question kind of fell along the same line. I too am in support because at one point in time it was two separate lots, and I can recognize why that's important. But at the end of the day, is this severance going to be null and void anyways because there's not going to be anything that can be done with that property, I guess is kind of where my thought is when I'm making this decision. I understand that you have a lot invested. I have been through a process similar to this, and it is very frustrating at times. And I just want to make sure we're also not leading you even further down a path that you're not going to be able to do anything, is my concern.
Thank you. So we have a motion on the floor, moved by Linda, seconded by Councillor Van Passen, to approve this application. I'll call the question, and
Can I just clarify? So we're approving something we don't actually have a drawing of in front of us. Is that what the motion is? That, because saying the lot lines, the original lot lines, we don't necessarily specifically know. I mean, I think we see it, but this is not a survey drawing to show the lot lines. So I'm just concerned that you're approving something that you don't actually see. You have the right to make decisions up until and receive new information up until. So if a new drawing had been presented this evening, yep, you would have been within your right to say, okay, that's fine. But we have no new drawing, so you're sort of approving something we have nothing in front of us to support in terms of a visual or any kind of survey drawing. So I just wanted to put that out there, that, this is at your own risk.
or the alternative is to defer and get more information. Is that what you're saying?
It could be a deferral, but again, it comes back to when does the saga end? Permits are not going to be issued for building. LPRCA will not, our building department will not. So, yep, you might end up with two pieces of property. It means the garage has to be demolished because it's on a separate piece of land and it's not an accessory to anything anymore. So you end up with a cottage, a vacant piece of land next to you, and you have to demolish the garage. So it's absolutely no further forward. So I think this is the concern, is that because there is no potential for the future development of that site, of that lot, separating it out is actually worse than retaining it as one lot, because the garage will have to be demolished. You can't stay on a lot by itself. So you end up, yep, lovely field to the side and no garage anymore. So I think that has to be considered. So this is why it was a fairly robust recommendation for refusal, because there is just no way forward. Deferring, yep, completely within your rights, but it's not going to get us any further. The reality is the lot's not going to be buildable. So,
Councillor.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, normally it's not staff's job to debate a motion that's on the floor.
Yes.
But saying that, if I read these rules, it says an existing lot of record, you're allowed to develop. If this is an existing lot of record because of the rule, the law, that once a lot, always a lot, and somehow somebody screwed up and the paperwork says that you're only getting one tax bill for it, that does not matter. Once a lot, it's always a lot. And I'd suggest that you go to the lawyer and find out, and said, unless it has been specifically deemed to merge those two lots or has been through some other policy, it is still a separate lot, and we don't even need to be here. But if the applicants want to sever it, our policies say if it's an existing lot, that you can develop it. The Conservation Authority might put a lot of conditions on, or might be opposed to building it for residential use, but this is not residential, it's a cottage. It's the only thing that can be built there. And again, if the applicants are willing to risk that, potentially it might go to the OLT and all those things. And, to be suggesting that we have no picture of it, well, we have the picture of it. You can see the old lot line, and the red line is, 1.7 meters away from that. I don't need a better picture from that. We never get survey drawings here, we get pictures, so, throwing out a bunch of potential excuses does not help this whole process.
Okay.
But there is a motion on the floor, Mr.
Thank you.
Chairman.
Yes, there is a motion on the floor, and so we'll go to that motion as it is. And
Can I just, sorry to interrupt you, can I just?
We've covered all the bases, and now we're going to do business, okay? So anyway, moved by Linda, seconded by Councillor Van Passen, that file number BNPL 2023370 be approved. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So just let me get this straight. Tim, Phil? Phil? No, you didn't vote.
No, at this point, we've just approved what's here on the screen.
That motion's carried.
So it's got to be, has to be a condition.
What?
Approved with the amended lot lines.
To the original.
I did, I put original lot lines.
Okay, so it's approved
On
with
the
the
back.
amended condition.
As long as that's there, that's fine.
Okay, so that motion is carried and approved. I'll ask you to pass that around, please. And so we have two minor variance applications, ANPL 2023369, a mover and a seconder to either approve or an alternative. Linda?
I'll move to defer that for recirculation
Okay.
because the calculations will be
Off. Okay, so that's a motion for deferral. That takes precedence. Any debate? There's really no debate on a motion for deferral, is there? All in favor? And that is carried. Councillor Berry, are you voting? Okay, thank you. That's approved.
Who seconded?
I'm sorry, can I get a seconder for that motion that we've already voted on? Pardon? Phil, thank you. And that's a defer. Why does my name keep moving on these pages? Jeez. So we have the other variance, ANPL 2023404. I'm assuming that you are going to make a motion for deferral again, Linda? Thank you. And a seconder, please. Councillor Van Passen, thank you. All in favor of deferral on ANPL 2023404? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. And that's deferred. Thank you. Okay, lastly, we have any other business? Not really.
Linda wanted to.
Oh, Linda?
I just wanted to ask staff if it's possible that, just because of the surplus farm dwelling issue tonight, would it be possible to get from staff the related policies so that the committee can read the policies that and as it relates to the requirement for a farm with a house on it. So I would just like to see the policy specific to those issues.
Thank you. Through the chair to Member Linda, the policies referenced are in the planner's report, and it's based on the interpretation of the policies in the planner's report.
Okay, thank you. A motion to adjourn, please. Lisa, Phil. All in favor? 7:20. Thank you.
I should have brought a sweater, clearly.